And here we are at Star Trek The Experience with Manny Coto and Brannon Braga. Hi guys.
How are you?
Say hi to the Trek movie community.
Hi Trek movie community. Thanks for coming. Thanks for visiting this wonderful website.
You guys are now working together again on 24. You've been at it for about a year. What's it like to work together again on a different series?
It's a lot of fun. And thank God Brannon came aboard, because this was a tough year. I don't know where we would be without Brannon this season 7. I mean, it was a tough, and Brannon, he's perfect for the show. How did it come about that Brannon joined the show?
Manny brought me on.
Really?
I was walking down Hollywood Boulevard, and I heard somebody say, "Do you have any change?" And I turned around, and there was Brannon holding a sign, and
wearing the Star Trek, old nappy old Star Trek uniform.
And I said, "Hey, Brannon, come on, let's do something here." And that's where the magic started.
Wow. Now, this new season of 24, you guys are kind of throwing everything out the door and starting all over again, it almost seems like. So you've changed cities, you have Jack's in Africa. Why did you feel that the show needed to go through such a big change?
Well, I think as writers and producers, we were a little bored with the same old. We didn't want to do LA again. We'd done LA. I've been on the show since beginning of season 5, so I wasn't even as bored as the rest of the other guys who've been on since day 1. And so they were like, "We got to change LA. We've got to get out of here. We got to do Washington." And Jack in Africa just seemed like a wonderful, place to put him. A place which is topical, which is currently topical, and made for an exciting prequel movie, which bridges season 6 and 7.
And then, of course, season 7, which begins in January, takes place in Washington, D.C.
So, where's Jack?
He's in Washington.
For season 7?
Yeah, for the prequel, which takes 2 hours, on its own, takes place in Africa.
Right.
And it basically explains how he got from Africa to Washington.
Okay. Now, you guys have brought on a couple of Enterprise stars onto the show this season. Was that just a coincidence, or was that by design? Is that something that you went out to do?
It wasn't coincidence, right? We kept our eye. At least we both have kept our eye on actors who we wanted to work with in the past. John Billingsley was the one who had always had my, as well as Connor, and several other Star Trek actors as well, who we just haven't been able to get on the show yet. I think you'll agree. I think we're just keeping our eye open for when the parts open up and there's something there.
Is it Connor that joined, or I thought it was so Connor and John and Billingsley?
Connor and John Billingsley.
Okay. And who else would you like outside of Enterprise? I think during the set you said you have some ideas for what you'd do with Spiner.
You want to take that one?
No. I mean, we just were admirers of Brent Spiner, and he's a wonderful actor. And Manny thinks he'd make a great slimy White House bureaucrat. I kind of agree.
Yeah, he'd be a great villain in some capacity, because there's a dark edge to him. He played Data, and he was very warm and friendly, but there's always an undercurrent of dementedness, which I think would be great.
More like Brent in real life.
Well, as long as he talks about how the only roles he gets offered these days are scientist roles, and in fact, you cast him as a scientist. I think he said after he did ID4,
He just did some other movie where he's a scientist. I saw a trailer for it.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's
he plays the same person he did in Independence Day.
Yeah,
I thought he was great in Threshold, though. I mean, that's one of the things that I saw that and it's like, we got to get him on 24. I just thought he was dynamite.
He was good.
So, as two sci-fi fans and writers in genre, do you ever find yourself having to keep your genre sci-fi elements in check on 24? Do you ever, is ever like, and then Jack runs into a spatial anomaly, or...
Not really. I'll tell you, though, 24 does have its own share of tech writing. I mean, imaginative writing, which on Star Trek, you know, it was like, you know, the nacelles are in the middle of a cascade, an ion cascade or whatever, stuff you make up.
Right.
And frankly, a lot of the 24 stuff is very similar. A lot of the technology that's 24, a lot of us we just make up, and maybe do a little research afterwards to see if we can make it fit. But on that aspect, they're having a sci-fi background kind of helps, because 24 is marginally sci-fi if you really look at it.
So what is the spatial anomaly that gets Jack around Los Angeles traffic in the amount of time that it takes? Have you figured that out yet?
It's a slipstream wormhole.
Oh,
class 5 slipstream wormhole.
It's about the size of a Volkswagen. You can slip through it.
Sorry, I'm new. Okay, now for season 3 of Star Trek Enterprise, there was, which is when you joined, Manny, right? Was that kind of directly? Did you look at 24 and said, "Yeah, let's do some of that. Let's do a season-long arc," or was it the inspiration?
Partly. I mean, we certainly, as I recall, we certainly talked about doing a 24 does it very successfui, but it's obviously very different.
Right.
24 is real time, but we just wanted to try something new, and we had a hugely expansive storyline. It was the fundamentals of which were worked out, and it was not going to. We talked about, well, maybe this is just 13 episodes, maybe it's just 8. And we're like, screw it, let's make it the whole year.
Now, look, in a way, there's kind of 3 types of Star Trek Enterprise. There's season 1 and 2, which is had an overall mythology of the temporal Cold War, but often also used the similar kind of Voyager Next Generation episodic model. Then there's season 3, which was highly serialized, tied together, and then season 4 you went for the mini arcs. Now looking back, which model do you think worked best for the story you were trying to tell of the 3 types?
Well, I really kind of like the 3 episode arcs. I must say, I found them. They were just. I think they were the perfect size, and I think in developing future television shows, I actually think it'd be fun to pitch a series that does exactly that, because then you can release the episodes on like DVDs. It's like little movies, and they're limiting. They're not too limiting, and they're freeing in a way. You don't have to cram everything into one episode. You resolve everything in one episode, but at the same time, they allow you to expand. I mean, they're not. It's a little more freeing. It allows you to tell more epic stories and wrap them up at your own leisure than to have to cram everything in one episode. And also, you can explore bigger themes.
I agree completely.
Yeah, I like the 3 and the 2 episode arcs. I mean, the 2, it doesn't have to be 3. The 2 episode arcs, maybe 4. I mean, I just think it's nowadays with television, we should start exploring different, especially with DVDs. These things can be recut and re-released in DVDs as their own, entities, and I think.
Brannon, do you think that is kind of one of the criticisms of Voyager and Enterprise, is that both shows were a little late to the game on more serialization, more mythology, and in the era of the DVD, being episodic and kind of standalone for syndication wasn't as important. Is that something that?
Well, on Voyager...
Do you think that's a fair criticism?
Of course it is. But on Voyager, DVDs, I don't know that they really had... No one really quite knew how television was going to work on DVD. So syndication was very much on the mind of the studio. We did do a lot of 2-parters on Voyager. It became kind of one of the trademarks of the series. And I think it's a little unfair to say that it's not a serialized show, and that things that happen to the characters, whether it's Next Generation or any of them, the stuff does carry through. It's just not a long continuing storyline, which just would not have been viable to do. The studio would not have allowed it.
By the way, serialization still isn't that popular with the studio. I mean, 24 makes its money on DVDs, but it doesn't make a dime on, very little on
syndication.
On syndication.
It's impossible to syndicate.
It's impossible to syndicate. They've only just now, I think last year sold it made some decent packages for syndication. So it's not, and it's still not. When you go out and pitch television shows now,
they want a CSI.
They want CSI.
Right.
Little nuggets that they can air in any order they want.
Right.